You. Welcome to hour number 3, our third and final live right here on this Friday on the early line on SportsGrid. One more hour to go before we send you into your weekend. And as we just shared at the end of our second hour, what a weekend in the sports landscape it is going to be. And in this third and final hour, there is so much to get to. The third and final leg of the Triple Crown tomorrow, the Belmont Stakes, but not at Belmont Park on Long Island, up in Saratoga, due to track renovations out on Long Island at Belmont Park. Our guy, Dubsy Anderson, joins us next. Marquee weekend in Major League Baseball. Across the pond, we go tomorrow for the London series between the Phillies and the Mets, and a marquee matchup this weekend at Yankee Stadium, of which I will be in attendance for the opener. It's the Yanks and the Dodgers. Plenty of Major League Baseball plays on this Friday. Some more super regional conversation. We'll look at the NBA Finals with Game 2 on the horizon on Sunday. Stanley Cup Final starts tomorrow on a Saturday in Sunrise. And Adua will join us in this third and final hour. The list goes on and on. I'm almost out of breath.
Yeah, how about that? We should have a good weekend set up overall, and it's our job over this final hour to get you ready for that weekend action. So if you like Seize the Gray because, we don't really know where he's running or which race he won, that's the perfect antidote because that probably means he is going to win the series this week, win the Belmont this weekend. It is, by the way, interesting. Yeah. Belmont going over to Saratoga. I'm glad we actually do have a professional coming on with us to let us know why the move is there and what the differences in the race will be and actually provide us some great content here. So we got everything covered. We got you covered here.
Yes, we certainly do have you covered, and we will have a conversation on the 2024 NBA Finals. Boston victorious in game number 1 last night in a large way, 107-89, nearly a 20-point victory for the C's at home inside TD Garden. The Celtics easily cover as a 6.5-point home favorite against the Dallas Mavericks. Did the result of game 1 change our mind of how long this series goes in the NBA Finals? We'll give you our thoughts on what the people had to say and Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, how many games will there be in the 2024 NBA Finals? 4, 5, 6, or 7? And Donnie, I would then argue that the public really hasn't changed their perception based on the results of this poll. The winner of it, nearly 45% of the votes, is the NBA Finals to still go 6 games between the Celtics and the Mavericks. What do you make of how the public is reacting to game number 1 last night in Beantown?
I like that we're really not overreacting based on some of the results here because I don't think coming into the series, many people thought it would end in 4, and quite frankly, second least amount of votes here coming in on 4 games. Now, 7 games, a lot of people probably thought we're trending in that direction, but I know for people like the Mavericks, you're not really going to pick them in 7, so therefore you trend to 6, and certainly you can see the Boston Celtics possibly winning that in 6 games and that being the favorite. So I don't think it's changed all that much all the way through. 5 games probably has crept up a lot more because if we're targeting, prices on this series, I think most people coming into it said, you know what, 2 good basketball teams would probably go 6 or 7, which 4 and 5 would get left out. But I do see that door opening now for 5 games, particularly if the Boston Celtics, Ben, can handle game number 2 in their own building and take that 2-0 series lead back. Because typically the expectation is what? Between 2 good basketball teams. You split the first 2, you split the second 2, and then it's a best of 3 on the way out. But we won't get that, obviously, if Boston wins game number 2, and then they expect to just get win 1 game down in Dallas. So I see where the poll's going. It does make some sense. And I like the fact that, again, it's not an overreaction that we're having today.
And from the odds maker's perspective, before the opening night of the NBA Finals yesterday in Boston, for the Celtics to win the series in either 5 or 7 games was the shortest number, then AKA the most likely outcome in the series correct score market, both at plus 340. Boston in 5, Boston in 7, Celtics in 6, third shortest outcome at plus 470. I still think we see at least 6 games. I would not be surprised if the Mavs even this series heading back to Dallas for game number 3. And I do appreciate the public here not overreacting because I think there could be many, DRS, that look at Boston winning by 18, easily cruising through the opening half and taking it to the Mavs from the very jump in game number one and say to themselves, yeah, Dallas just really can't get it done. Boston is the better overall team. Luka Doncic scored 30, and the Celtics still won by 18 points. The C's have been the best team all year long. That's where the Celtics will be at the end of this season, because I think that's the natural and easy comprehension to take from game number one. But I do also think we should just look at it realistically. Boston has been the best home team all year long. Last night was game number 50 for the C's inside TD Garden. They're 44-6 straight up. They're 27-21-2 against the spread, booked as a favorite in all 50 home games. Last night, in fact, was the shortest spread in Boston's favor, either at home throughout this postseason, 9 games now, or the entirety of the playoff run, 15 games in total. So Boston winning, and winning comfortably at home, should not be a surprise. It should not be a shock. It really shouldn't, in essence, change our overall thought on how the NBA Finals are going to play out.
No, it shouldn't. And you get back to just the regular season where Boston, from early on, we expected to be the best team in the NBA. But also, here's what you love as a handicapper, because sometimes you get some of those human elements creeping in. And we say this, it's not as if Boston struggled in the first 3 series getting here to the finals. They won rather easily, but we weren't giving them that much credit because those teams were injured and certainly what we believe to be inferior. But also, having said that, the backtracking here on the Celtics was, this is a great basketball team, and they're getting Kristaps Porzingis back. So what are we actually going to get from a Celtics team that now looks like it's finally playing its first team that can give them a run for their money? Well, based on last night, what you saw right out of the gate, boy, that money is running out quickly here for the Dallas Mavericks. Now, granted, we had Brian on with us, and we've been around the block too many times. A series isn't over after game number 1, and particularly with the Boston Celtics, as we've seen through the first 2 series, they lost game number 2 against inferior opponents on their court. Now, I don't want to say the Dallas Mavericks are an inferior opponent after what we saw in game number 1, like, they just can't compete. We know they're much, much better than they showed, and maybe that layoff affected them much, much more than the Boston Celtics. So my opinion doesn't vary. Coming into it, Ben, we both said the Boston Celtics are going to win the series. We're not surprised Boston is up 1-0. What will be surprising is if Boston clocks the Mavericks in game number 2 again. We're expecting a much better effort out of the Mavericks.
In that game, naturally, not only with Boston holding a 2-0 series advantage, but if the Celtics do dominate Dallas, cover as a 7-point favorite for game number 2 on Sunday night, that alters everything for the 2024 NBA Finals, for how long the series will go and what effort the Mavericks put forth. But again, I don't like to make things as simple because there are nuances to what we are discussing, but your 2 premier NBA handicappers pretty much told you that Dallas has the best player in this series in Luka Doncic. You could argue Dallas has the better duo that we see here. Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, a better pair, perhaps at their peak, than the Jays, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But Boston better balanced as a team overall. 1-7, 1-8, certainly with the return of Kristaps Porzingis, who was sensational last night, 20 points in 21 minutes off the bench. And so I say that, Donnie, because if Luka even gives you 30, but Kyrie goes 6 of 19 from the floor and 0 of 5 from 3 and scores only 12 points, Dallas is not going to win a game, maybe not multiple games, in the NBA Finals. So Kyrie Irving has to be better in game number 2. Luka Doncic even needs to be a little bit better in game number 2. And I would expect them both to be on Sunday night so that when we have our next show here on the early line, this series could be tied at 1-1.
And I'm interested to see what we do get out of Luka Doncic. And as I said to start the show, I'm buying on him because if that was a bad performance by the rest of the team and he still was able to get off 26 shots for 30 points, the sky is the limit. Wait till he plays over 40 minutes here. The one thing is apparent. When he wants to get a shot off, he can do that. And I expect big things out of Luka the rest of the way.
To Belmont, but really to Saratoga, we go up next.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
You're going a little deep bomb hunting here. We don't care that we have the one heavy favorite with Rory, a couple other guys like Fleetwood and Tagala, etc. You're going to go a little deeper down the board.
This course, I think, is going to play a little bit more to the wedges. They have, what they did is they've renovated it to basically block off some of the bombing alleys for these guys. They've narrowed the fairways.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole's getting ready to come back too. I guess this, look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, look, don't come back. I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with an injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
The third leg of the Triple Crown looks ever so slightly different this year in 2024. The Belmont Stakes is still that third running of the Triple Crown in horse racing, but the track not at Belmont Park out on Long Island, upstate New York, Saratoga is where we will have this third leg of the Triple Crown this year. So to preview everything you need to know, the field, the horses, the thoroughbreds, and what this track looks like, our guy, Dubsy Anderson, is here on this Friday, bright and early out in the FanDuel TV headquarters on the West Coast, but to get you set for the third leg of the Triple Crown, the 2024 Belmont Stakes. Dubsy, as always, we appreciate the time.
Happy Friday, boys. The third jewel of the Triple Crown, the oldest of the three classics. And as you highlighted there, Ben, looks a little differently this year. Instead of Belmont Park, we will race the Belmont at Saratoga. So what does that mean? Well, it's going to be ran at a shorter distance, or 1.5 miles. We go back to 1.25 miles, the same distance of the Kentucky Derby. And we've got a couple of superstars in the sport. Mystic Dan will be back in this field after that big win at Churchill Downs, and Seize the Grey, who captured the day at the Preakness. So the third jewel of the Triple Crown with those two heavy hitters and a couple of fresh faces certainly looks to be one of the most competitive additions that we've seen in the last couple of years.
As we all know, Seize the Grey, winning the second leg of the Triple Crown, the Preakness Stakes, not all that long ago. So, Dubsy, you mentioned the distance and the change from what would normally be the longest race at Belmont Park, now at Saratoga, looking similar to what we saw at Churchill Downs. Are there any differences in the track outside of the distance from what we're used to out on Long Island?
Yeah, so I guess with a smaller field and a longer stretch to get things underway, it really gives all of these runners a great shot at it. You know, we've got 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby. We've only got 10 runners going in for this one. So I really do think any horse from that starting gate has a realistic shot of taking out this big score. And look, the public are going to be very invested in the big names, the big favorites that have come out of those first two classics. So I think this is a great race and a great betting opportunity to maybe target a bit of a price. You know, the Derby, the Preakness, and here at the Belmont, these are the 3-year-olds. They've only got this one season once. So for some runners, have we seen their top gear already? Could we see a couple of starters? Mindframe from the outside only has the 2 career starts. But you look at the speed figs, has a lot of upside. So it should be a fantastic one. Saturday afternoon, we are expecting a bit of weather, 86% chance there of a couple of showers. So we're looking for horses who certainly got that pedigree to get it done on the off track.
Dubs, when we take a look at this race, because the reason why we don't get a Triple Crown winner every single year because of how hard it is to run all three of those races in that short of a time frame. So for the people that don't know out there, are there a couple horses here that have run all three? And also, are there any plant horses here in the Belmont that maybe they're just surfacing now as their first run in the Triple Crown series?
Yeah, I think the outside runner is certainly one to watch. The 10 mind frame only has the 2 starts, and the speed figs absolutely monster from what we have seen, especially there breaking that maiden. We'll see Mystic Dan, who won the Kentucky Derby, and the question mark for Mystic Dan was to roll it back 2 weeks into the Preakness. Showed up to the Preakness, a very game runner-up performance. I think there could be a bit of a bounce looming here for Mystic Dan. It's a lot to ask of a 3-year-old to keep going, a couple of weeks back in such a big effort, and I do think there could be a bit of a pace early in this one. So Mystic Dan, your Kentucky Derby champion, I think is absolutely going to be up against it. Sierra Leone, your morning line favorite there. Now, Sierra Leone, I think, gets a really good setup and could be arguably the most talented 3-year-old of the bunch. A runner-up there in the Derby, Flavion Pratt gets the ride. So we've got a new rider aboard Sierra Leone, the 9. So no surprises here. It's a home game for Chad Brown. And if we do see another step forward, a bit more progression, Sierra Leone could be very tough trying to mow down.
Sierra Leone, the favorite right now, that 9-5 number that Dubs just referenced. He lost out to Mystic Dan at the Kentucky Derby in the closest ever finish we have seen at the run for the Roses. But Dubsy, so far in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, it really hasn't been that betting favorite that has paced the field. So as you look at these 10 horses that will run the 2024 Belmont Stakes, what is your best bet, whether it be a straight wager or maybe one of those exotics to finish out the 3rd leg of the Triple Crown?
I'm looking towards the 2, Resilience, listed there at 10-1 on the board, plus 1,000. You can already get these numbers over at the FanDuel Sportsbook with the advanced wagering. It's been boom or bust. A winner of the Grade 2, the Wood Memorial, showed up to the Kentucky Derby, really didn't get a favorable trip. So I don't think we have seen the top gear, the top level here for the 2, Resilience, and we're still getting a massive price. A lot of bettors who play the ponies, they'll really jump in and target the classics. And of course, your Kentucky Derby winner will see a lot of attention. Seize the Grey, who won the Preakness, will also get a couple of dollars thrown on it at the window. So I think the 2, Resilience, after making a very bold move in the Kentucky Derby, flattened out a little late in that one with a better extra fitness. The morning works looked very sharp here for Bill Mott and the team. I think this colt, the 2, Resilience, is getting set to run at a very big price.
If we take a look at this race heading into here, and again, it's not at Belmont. It is moved over to Saratoga Springs. 50,000 fans were capped out. And this is different because we see almost twice the amount of fans at the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. From you being a true horse racing fan here, how does the approach change? Is it different for the horses or the trainers, or you shouldn't worry about that atmosphere at all? These horses just run the race they're supposed to run.
Yeah, I think we can sort of put a bit more weight on the horses that have gone through a couple of the bigger races, just having that experience race in front of a lot of people. These are younger horses, and you get out there to the track in front of 50, 60, 70,000. At that point, they don't know the difference between 20,000, 40,000, but it's noisy. There's that crowd environment, and just going into the starting gate for a lot of them who don't have that experience. I think Mind Frame, the 10, could be the buzz horse, the bit of a price play for a lot of the handicappers. That would be the question mark for me, just having those 2 starts with the monster speed figures to go with. Lightly raced there on the experience front. Maybe that could be the knock towards the outside run, the 10 Mind Frame. But you certainly want to see that they've either gone into the Kentucky Derby or the Preakness. I think that's why the 2, Resilience, stands out for me as a bit of a price play. Just having that experience and already showing up and giving us a big performance on a big stage such as that.
Maybe the crowd cap at Saratoga doesn't make all that much different for the atmosphere for the horses, but it does mean less alcohol consumption because let me tell you, Belmont Park for the Belmont Stakes, the place Donnie Rightside would never want to go. Dubsy Anderson, we appreciate it always. Enjoy the 3rd leg of the Triple Crown tomorrow. Thanks for being here. More on the early line next.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, The name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
You're going a little deep bomb hunting here. We don't care that we have the one heavy favorite with Rory, a couple other guys like Fleetwood and Tagala, etc. You're going to go a little deeper down the board.
This course, I think, is going to play a little bit more to the wedges. They have, what they did is they've renovated it to basically block off some of the bombing alleys for these guys. They've narrowed the fairways.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole is getting ready to come back too. I guess this. Look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, "Look, don't come back." I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with an injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
A marquee matchup this weekend in Major League Baseball. Two of the biggest brands in the sport, two of the biggest brands in all of sports, colliding this weekend up in the Bronx inside Yankee Stadium. It's the Yankees hosting the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I will be there for game number 1 of this weekend set tonight. On the bump for L.A., Yoshinobu Yamamoto gets the start for the Dodgers, who in their 64 Major League Baseball games so far this season have only been booked as an underdog 3 times. It might happen at some point this weekend against MLB's best team, the Yankees 45-19, most wins, best record in all of the bigs, but not as of this moment for tonight. LA with Yamamoto on the mound, minus 126 is the road money line favorites.
Yeah, trying to do some background information quickly here. Cody Poteet is going to be on the mound, so certainly not one of those named pitchers that we like to talk about, but looking at some of the starts that he's had this year in Major League Baseball, only 2, which is on my numbers, shows 42 at-bats total, only 19 of those in the past 30 days. If we take a look between those starts, 5 innings pitched and 6 innings pitched, he's actually done decent there. The last game he's pitched against the Giants on the 1st of the month, 19 batters he faced there, 2 earned runs. Before that, he went 6 innings against the Guardians on the road and only 1 earned, so he will be making his first start of the year at Yankee Stadium. It certainly shows that stepping up into the big time, he can fill into those shoes because you're going to need it going up against some of these hitters. Now, granted, 75 degrees at first pitch. You take a look at 12-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to right field. We got an atmosphere that should be able to get that ball into the seats. But if we're taking a look from that, Dodgers perspective, you do have the better pedigree pitcher on the mound. There's no doubt about that. Numbers for the past 30 days have been good, but a little bit leaky against right-handed batters. Yeah. And as we know, you start to focus on Stanley. You start to focus on Aaron Judge, and rightfully so. Now, in the starting lineup anticipated today is Juan Soto, who certainly has been doing his fair amount of damage over the past month going up against right-handed pitchers. The question is going to be, is he going to come back in? Now, reading into the Soto injury, he actually said, Ben, it doesn't hurt when I hit or throw or even play the field. It's really just when I'm just sitting around and I can just feel that achiness in my forearm. Now, the good part about that is he's not a pitcher. When you hear forearm tightness out of a pitcher, you start to think doom and gloom. Forearm tightness out of a hitter, maybe you can work around that and maybe it's no big deal because he did come out of last night's game after the rain delay as a precautionary factor. But sometimes we see that, hey, give the guy a day or 2 off. It's like the World Series to do that because all of these guys are amped up by playing the Dodgers and playing the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. I would be surprised if Soto's out of the lineup, but just something to keep an eye on tonight.
Yeah, it is really interesting, DRS, because forearm tightness, if you were to hear that for any pitcher, like, all right, Tommy John surgery, let's get it on the OR schedule as of right now. But not the case necessarily with your positional player. And good to hear from Soto that it's not really bugging him, just can be sore and achy after layoffs. And with the delay yesterday, maybe that was the issue. A spotty shower or two midway through the afternoon in the New York City area, but I am very pleased because tonight is supposed to be perfect baseball weather up in the Bronx. And, Donnie, these are two of the biggest brands in the sport, two of the most publicly bet teams each and every year, but it does not always mean success necessarily. But this season, things are different. Both the Yankees and the Dodgers matching expectation here in the first 2+ months of this MLB campaign. LA 39-25. Again, New York, the best record in the bigs, 45-19. The Yankees have the best run differential in Major League Baseball, +118. The Phillies, the second best. The Orioles, the third. And the Dodgers, the fourth best run differential in all of MLB. Each and every year, you can enter a season and ask, where are the Dodgers and Yankees going to finish the year? Are they both going to be true World Series contenders? I would say this year that is certainly going to happen.
No, it looks like, and you might get a preview here, and rightfully so. And also keep in mind, I say this a lot. You know, sometimes when you talk about some teams that are playing well, like the Cleveland Guardians, let's just say the Kansas City Royals, ownership groups take it upon themselves a little bit differently than the big markets. It's like, okay, let's see if we can add an extra bat here, maybe somebody to the bullpen. When you have those front line markets here, like the Dodgers and the Yankees, and they square up knowing that there's a legitimate chance they can win a World Series, they go all in at the deadline. They add payroll. They don't subtract it and just tinker around saying, hey, can we get an extra utility guy on the roster? This will be interesting to see because it is a measuring stick series, even though it is in New York. The better team, whoever wins it, you're going to have that leg up and say, okay, if we meet you again at the end of the season, which will be in the World Series, we'll be ready for it. It's a fantastic series in the Bronx. Can't wait to watch it play out this weekend.
$1.50 separates LA and New York in the World Series prices, the top two numbers that we see. The Dodgers, the favorites to win this fall classic. The Yankees +410. By the way, New York, a slight series favorite to win this weekend set over LA, -114 for them, -106 for the Dodgers. Game one for the Stanley Cup Final. A preview next.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
You're going a little deep bomb hunting here. We don't care that we have the one heavy favorite with Rory, a couple other guys like Fleetwood and Tagala, etc. You're going to go a little deeper down the board.
This course, I think, is going to play a little bit more to the wedges. They have, what they did is they've renovated it to basically block off some of the bombing alleys for these guys. They've narrowed the fairways.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole's getting ready to come back too. I guess this. Look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, "Look, don't come back." I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with the injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
We are now just one day away from the start of the Stanley Cup Final here in 2024 on a Saturday in Sunrise. It's the Florida Panthers with home ice advantage against the Edmonton Oilers. The Panthers back into the Cup Final for a second consecutive season. The Oilers here for the first time in nearly 2 decades since 2006. A Canadian team in the hunt for Lord Stanley's Cup, trying to win the first one for the Great White North in more than 3 decades. A native of Canada joins us here bright and early on this Friday morning to preview the Stanley Cup Final between the Panthers and the Oilers. Anna Dua from the NHL live right here on this Friday on the early line. Anna, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to be here on this Friday on SportsGrid.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We are very happy to have you here. Very happy to be breaking down game number 1 in all of the Stanley Cup Final as you see it. So the Panthers back into the Cup Final for a second straight year, but different circumstances. Anna, last year they were the plucky underdogs, the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. This year, much better odds to get to this stage once again. Edmonton with Connor McDavid into the Cup Final for the first time since '06. How do you think these two teams stack up now getting ready to start the Stanley Cup Final tomorrow night?
I think that it's a pretty good matchup. Like, we saw both of the conference finals for their respective conferences go to 6 games. So you kind of saw both teams get their momentum. Florida had really close contests with New York throughout that series. And Edmonton really impressed me towards the tail end of their series against Dallas. Like, Dallas is a great team. They have a lot of depth, and Edmonton proved a point there and making it to the Stanley Cup Final. Like, this is a hump that the Oilers have been trying to get over for the past couple of seasons. But Florida, my goodness, top to bottom, they might be like the best equipped team. They play a really rough style of hockey that gets under the skin of their opponents, and this is going to be like really well contested. I think it's going to be a long series.
A lot of talk about this, and rightfully so. The last time Canada won a championship, meaning the Stanley Cup, was way back in 1993. Let me ask you this question, because I like to equate it to terms that I know. No, here we go. Like, listen to this.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL. They're in the East. So if I say to myself, hey, as long as we keep it in the East, like if the Dallas Cowboys win the championship, that's fine and that's merited here. But in Canada, are there rivalries where you say, like, I don't care that Edmonton is in Canada. I don't want to see Edmonton win the Cup. Or is it just national pride here? Look, what do we got?
A lot of people do support their team. Like, I'm not going to speak for all Canadians here. Like, I'm definitely not going to do that because they're going to come attack me in a very nice way because we are Canadian. But they do support their teams over the country. I think a majority of people do, because you still have a lot of rivalries. I don't know if anyone in Calgary is rooting for the Edmonton Oilers to win the Stanley Cup. Like, I hate to break it to you. I feel like the Battle of Alberta is one of the biggest rivalries in the NHL. But as someone from Toronto, I personally would love to see the Cup come back to Canada. So I'm one of those folks who's like, oh, like, it's been a while since it's been north of the border. And a lot of Canadians do this because everyone in the States keeps saying that Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup in so long. But a lot of Canadians will say, like, American teams win with Canadian players. So a lot of people root for, like, guys who are from, like, near where they're from. So the Cup comes back during the summer when they all have their day with the Cup.
The last Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup, the 1993 Montreal Canadiens. We just showed you right there. Not many appearances for a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup Final in the last 3 decades. Donnie just really wants to know, Anna, how all of Canada through your eyes is going to feel about the Stanley Cup if it is back in the Great White North. Asking that question for a second consecutive week. So, Anna, as we focus on this year's Cup Final, Florida, a home ice favorite for game number 1. They have home ice advantage throughout the Stanley Cup Final, and a short favorite to win Lord Stanley's Cup at minus 130. Is Florida the correct favorite before we get to game number 1 for the series overall, which starts tomorrow night?
I think they are, for sure. Like, I think the Edmonton Oilers are going to give them a run for their money, but if we're just setting odds, I think Florida should be the favorite. They've proved themselves throughout their entire run to the Stanley Cup Final. They've been here before. They're a team that's well-equipped to make it all the way, and they just play Florida Panthers style hockey. It's a very different style of hockey than other teams, and you saw the New York Rangers try and adjust to it, and they just were not able to. We'll see if Edmonton's able to do the same thing, but they have a very unique way of playing this game. Like, it's like no other team in the NHL watching the Florida Panthers play hockey.
It should be a good one, but also does that equate to an extended series? Because we take a look at some of these price points in 4 games, it's a plus 580 price, but the favorite in the series is to actually go 7 games here. We love close games, we love overtimes, and more importantly, a game 7 in a final, we would love that. How do you see this series playing out? Shorter or longer here for you?
I think 6 or 7 for sure. I think these two teams are going to go at it, and I think that Edmonton's riding a lot of momentum coming out of the Western Conference Final, and Florida's kind of been strong throughout the entire postseason. So matching up head-to-head, I see it going the distance. I wonder how much home ice advantage is going to be a factor in this game, because there's a lot of distance between these two cities. I think this is the furthest a Stanley Cup Final has ever been. I believe I saw that. So Edmonton and Florida, a lot of travel time. So you wonder how the home ice advantage thing is going to change with the Stanley Cup Final compared to previous round. So if that's a factor, I'm saying like maybe 6 games, and then we see that happen, but I could easily see this going 7. I think it's going to be in for the long haul.
Anna, to your point, Edmonton, the northernmost organization in the National Hockey League, the Florida Panthers, the southernmost team in all of the NHL. A long distance to travel between these two cities. Let's talk about the guys between the pipes, the netminders for this Stanley Cup Final. We know the man known as Bob, Sergei Bobrovsky, has been great the last 2 postseason runs for the Florida Panthers. Stuart Skinner, sensational in the clincher in the Western Conference Finals over the Dallas Stars, but was benched at a point throughout this postseason for Edmonton. So when you look at the goalies in the Cup Final, who do you give the edge?
This is a tough one. I think I got to give the edge to Sergei Bobrovsky just because he's been so consistent and was such a big part of the Florida Panthers making their run last season. I thought he stood out there, but I got to give Stuart Skinner some credit. Like the way he played in that series against the Dallas Stars, he made some big time saves when it mattered the most. I thought he gained confidence as the series went on, and the storyline's always been in the conference finals that of the 4 remaining goalies, Stuart Skinner was like kind of like the one goalie that you couldn't rely on, that maybe his team would have to compensate for, and he definitely proved them wrong towards the end of that series. Like he showed up when it mattered most to Edmonton, and Sergei Bobrovsky heading into the conference finals did not have the best save percentage this postseason. So I would trust Sergei Bobrovsky obviously more than Stuart Skinner overall, just 1-to-1 because of his experience. He's a Vezina winning goalie. He's done it before. He's made it this far before, but I'm not discounting Stuart Skinner. I think this is like more evenly matched than people will think. It's not like him against like Igor Shesterkin. Then you would have a very lopsided goalie matchup.
Great matchup, no doubt about it here. But if we're taking a look at the series itself, who is going to win this? Will it be South Florida? Will it be Edmonton?
I hate this question. I hate it so much because I'm going to say the Florida Panthers. I think the Florida Panthers are going to win the series, and I'm going to say that it's going to go 7 games.
The official Anna Dua Stanley Cup Final prediction that she loved to give out on the SportsGrid network, the Florida Panthers in 7 games. What a Stanley Cup Final that would be. And a quick... Why? Oh, because of the whole Canada thing.
I would love if Edmonton won.
Yeah. All right. But hey, listen, that's your non-biased way. Just looking at the actual stats and figures that we have for the Cup Final. And a game 1 tomorrow night in Sunrise. What do you think the series begins looking like tomorrow between the Panthers and the Oilers?
Like I said with the New York Rangers series in the Eastern Conference Final, like these teams have to adjust to Florida's style of play. So I think Florida wins game 1. I really like their look in game 1. I think maybe that's going to be the biggest differential we see too in terms of goals between the two teams as well, if you're taking a look at the puck line, just because I think the Florida Panthers play a very specific style of hockey, as I've been saying, where they're rough, they play a very physical game, and they have very skilled players that they kind of spread out throughout their lineup, and they're all able to contribute in that way. So I think it's going to take one game for Edmonton to figure out what's going on with Florida, get a breather, and make adjustments for game 2, but I like Florida in game 1.
If the Panthers win by multiple goals, cover on that puck line, it's plus 190. Some plus money out there for the starter of the Stanley Cup. Anna, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for being here. Major League Baseball breakdowns up next.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, The name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
You're going a little deep bomb hunting here. We don't care that we have the one heavy favorite with Rory, a couple other guys like Fleetwood and Tagala, etc. You're going to go a little deeper down the board.
This course, I think, is going to play a little bit more to the wedges. They have, what they did is they've renovated it to basically block off some of the bombing alleys for these guys. They've narrowed the fairways.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole's getting ready to come back too. I guess this. Look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, "Look, don't come back." I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with an injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
A full Friday slate around Major League Baseball. A great weekend here into the second full weekend of June. We're already past the 2-month point of this MLB campaign. Plenty of action for you on this Friday as I try to find our first game on the docket. There it is. The Royals and the Mariners. Tonight in Kansas City, a Midwest matchup. The Mariners, a slight favorite on the road in Kauffman. Total at 9. Royals victorious yesterday in Cleveland against the Guardians. The Mariners take the series with a 3-0 shutout in Oakland against the A's. How does that carry over to the Friday night opener between these two tonight?
Yeah, we'll find out. By the way, temperature's decent tonight. 80 degrees in Kansas City. Wind blowing out to left field at 9 miles per hour. Bryce Miller, good young pitcher here. The problem, he's filthy against right-handed batters, but struggling against left-handed batters. The issue is going to be is which left-handed batter is going to lean on. Now, we love the Pasquatch out here. Left-handed batter in the middle of that lineup does have a lower weighted on-base percentage against right-handed pitching over the past month, but he does have a 190 ISO power number. So if he can catch one there, maybe we can drive in some runs. Maybe the best overall hitter in the lineup tonight, of course, it's going to be Bobby Witt Jr., 277 ISO, weighted on base percentage 397 against right-handed pitching. But having said that, it's not a great lineup and not a great matchup here for Kansas City against Seattle. Flip it over to the other side. Daniel Lynch, not a lot to go off of. Only 46 batters he's faced on the season. He's got a 143 ISO and a 234 weighted on base percentage, which isn't bad. However, the first 4 batters in the lineup that we anticipate tonight against left-handed pitching over the past 30 days for the Mariners, it's been pretty good. Look at these ISO power numbers, Ben. J.P. Crawford, 389. Dylan Moore, 292. Julio Rodriguez, 233. And Ty France, 250. The runs are going to come from the first 4 guys in that Mariners lineup tonight.
So, DRS, I thought when you were describing the best batter for Kansas City, you were going to say our guy, Vinny Pasquantino, who led off the game yesterday for KC with an RBI double in the first. He has the same RBI price with Bobby Witt Jr., plus 125, just something to pay attention to. If it is ever going to happen, it really has to start happening. The fork is slightly out of the drawer right now for the Houston Astros. This weekend in Anaheim, taking on the Angels. The Angels have won 3 straight games entering this weekend set against Houston, but with Framber Valdez on the bump, the Astros a hefty favorite tonight in Anaheim. Valdez and Verlander, really the only 2 healthy arms that Houston still has left. Can it result in a win tonight against the Halos?
Yeah, not big on Canning here, but the one thing that's interesting about Griffin Canning here is a right-handed pitcher struggling with left-handed batters, but really good over the past 30 days and on the season against right-handed bats. The issue is going to be is how many lefties can we squeeze into the lineup here for the Astros? You take a look at Jordan Alvarez will be in there, and also switch hitter with Caratini. Everybody else would be from the right side, so that's an interesting matchup. Now, granted, Jordan Alvarez should be on your card tonight, people. 73 at-bats against right-handed pitching over the past month as a lefty, 313 ISO and a weighted on-base percentage of 451. That really checks out. By the way, Tucker, still not in that lineup. He would be a phenomenal start tonight going up against Griffin Canning. Flip it over to the opposite side and take a look at Framber Valdez. He actually has been very good against right-handed batters for the season and the past 30 days, but really struggles as a left-handed pitcher with left-handed bats. The only issue is most teams aren't going to line up left-handed batters against left-handed pitchers. The only one in this lineup here, Shanuel. Did I get that correctly this time here? Shanuel?
Oh.
You remember you had the pronunciation correct. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Damn it. I got to look it up now. Yeah, that's fine. I'll look it up. I'll look it up and get back to you.
As a lefty,
I'll look it up and get back to you.
Been legitimate.
Yeah.
Right-handed batters, Ben? Shanuel. There we go. So Nolan Shanuel at the top of that lineup might be on your list. But this team, talking about the Angels, has really hit, Ben, left-handed pitching over the past month extremely well. But the issue is going to be they're mostly right-handed batters. When I just told you Valdez has been really good against right-handed batters. Something has to give tonight. I look at that 8.5, and I think what gives are the two pitchers here, and they're giving up runs. Let's go over 9.
The Angels still in the cellar of the American League West, which has not been a good division outside of the Seattle Mariners, but the Halos did sweep the San Diego Padres during this week. Second consecutive divisional duel for the Baltimore Orioles. They leave Toronto after splitting a 4-game set, dropping the final 2. Now to Tampa, the O's go to take on the Rays. Tampa a slight favorite tonight at home with Aaron Savali on the bump. 8.5. The total, it was a pick'em. Now it's worked slightly in favor of the Rays.
It's another one where instead of looking at a side here, I think the total makes some sense. Now, granted, in the Trop, we're usually led to believe, and rightfully so, it's more of a pitcher's ballpark, and it is. But I think we got some good matchups here for the batters against these pitchers. Cole Irvin, over the past 30 days, 75 batters he's faced. The righties getting it over on him. A 191 ISO and a 369 weighted on base percentage. So you line up some of those right-handed batters that have done really well against lefties. Yandy Diaz, a 294 ISO power number. Randy Rosarania, 267 ISO power number. Isaac Paredes, 273. Siri, 583. Caballero, 273. See where we're going here? We should have a lineup that typically you don't look towards. Tampa Bay maybe be a play on. But on the other side, Aaron Savali struggling also with right-handed batters. Now, you're going to get a nice mix of lefty and righties in here, but guys that need to be on your list tonight, Ryan Mountcastle, 286, ISO power number at this point. Santander, 288. Some really good looks in that lineup. Yeah. So instead of taking a side, which I do think it's going to be close, I actually think we get runs in the Trop tonight. I do.
We did see the Orioles yesterday make things interesting. Adley Rutschman a homer in the 8th, Ryan O'Hearn a homer in the 9th, but ultimately could not overcome a 6-1 deficit against the Blue Jays. Next up, as we go around Major League Baseball to the home of the reigning World Series champs, the Texas Rangers, who have won 6 of their last 9 after really for the majority of May, dropping 12 of 14. So the Rangers at home tonight in this matchup against the San Francisco Giants. I look at the screen. Is this game not on the FanDuel Sportsbook? Am I going? There it is. The Giants a road favorite, minus 130, the over-under 7.5. What happens in the Texas tussle?
I mean, hosts not knowing where games are at, if they're on sports books at this point. But don't worry, we got you covered in this one. All you need to know is take the road team here as a short favorite price. That's Logan Webb, who's been stellar this season. Both full season with 326 batters. How about this, Ben? An ISO 086, weighted on base percentage of 287. If you remove Corey Seager, and again, pitch around him tonight. He's been absolutely electric against right-handed pitching over the past month. Not a lot of damage in that lineup tonight, so I do think the better lineup overall will be San Francisco, the better pitcher on the mound, San Francisco. Therefore, don't worry about the total. I think San Francisco handles their business with Logan Webb on the mound tonight.
7.5 is that total tonight in Arlington, short because of Logan Webb. A couple of more Major League Baseball breakdowns, some best bets, and an early look here on the early line at game number 2 on Sunday of the NBA Finals in Boston. All of that in the next segment. Next.
the Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
You're going a little deep bomb hunting here. We don't care that we have the one heavy favorite with Rory, a couple other guys like Fleetwood and Tagala, etc. You're going to go a little deeper down the board.
This course, I think, is going to play a little bit more to the wedges. They have, what they did is they've renovated it to basically block off some of the bombing alleys for these guys. They've narrowed the fairways.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Garrett Cole's getting ready to come back too. I guess this. Look, they've played great without him, but you're not going to say to Garrett Cole, "Look, don't come back." I mean, it's a ridiculous conversation to have.
They're not going to take any unnecessary chances. And look, they're at the point where they have a lead. They certainly are going to make the playoffs, I would say, barring some sort of complete collapse. And that's all it takes.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
8 playoff games at home for Boston in Beantown. They are 6-2 straight up.
The wild card, I would say, in this game is not necessarily, well, what are we going to get out of Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, Brown, and certainly Tatum. It is Kristaps Porzingis to me, because we're not getting back a player that's like, hey, rotational guy. Like, remember when Derek Lively went down with the injury? He was playing well, but a young player, like a piece.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
One of the best teams in Major League Baseball at this moment, at least in the past 2 weeks, the Cincinnati Reds. They've won 5 straight. That's the longest win streak they have had this season in Cincy. They've won 10 of the last 13. Other edge of that coin, the Chicago Cubs stink right now. They've dropped 10 of their last 14 games. Game 2 of this weekend set today at the Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. And the Reds, a slight favorite, -116 with Nick Lodolo on the bump to win the second straight against Justin Steele and the Cubs. Total at 9 tonight. What is your focus here in a game between the National League Central foes?
A left-handed pitcher, Justin Steele, been good against lefties this year, but not so good against righties. What if I told you TJ Friedel tonight's going to be the only lefty in the lineup for those Cincinnati Reds? And also taking a look at some of these opportunities. Low K percentages for this team over the past month. We're talking about Cincinnati up against left-handed pitching. That means the ball will be in play. But take a look at some of these weighted on base percentages of how they line up against lefties. 509, 357, 505, 405, 419, and 489. It looks like a nice night to back some of these Cincinnati Reds in the RBI market and also back them for the game here, Ben.
High total yesterday, 8-4 was that victory. We saw a lot of offense between the Cubs and the Reds. Ellie De La Cruz, 3-1 home run yesterday, plus 200 to record another ribby today. Donnie's back on the wagon.
By the way, I broke through with the Cruzes out here because yesterday O'Neal Cruz came through for me with a home run. So maybe Ellie is next on deck. But honestly, if we're just sticking with the statistics here, Ellie doesn't match up all that well against left-handed pitching, so he will be off my card. But if he does hit, that'll be an added bonus because a lot of those other guys, as I said, would look really good tonight for the Reds.
Total at 9. The under has the slight juice at the Game 2 of the NBA Finals is on Sunday. Boston winning by 18 in game number 1, covering easily as a 6.5-point favorite. Just the second cover for the C's in their last 7 games. In game 2s have been a little bit interesting for Boston. They did beat the Indiana Pacers. In fact, it was their only other cover in this 7-game span in the Eastern Conference Finals, but lost by double digits to the shorthanded Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers in each of their opening 2 sets. Could we see something similar with the Mavericks, a 7-point underdog for Sunday night?
You want to think they bounce back and have a better performance, and maybe this game number 1 was really just an outlier, it turns out, on this series. But you know me, I'm trying to hunt down some quality numbers, and that would be Luka Doncic at plus 470 price for a triple-double. You say, wait a second. Yeah, he got the rebounds, he got the points, but he didn't have any assists. Sooner or later, some of those guys are going to make some shots. And if I think Luka is in one of those modes where I believe he has to be, this is going to be one on my shoulders. He's going to play 40-plus minutes, and as long as we have a single-digit game, he has a legitimate chance to get that triple-double. Plus 470 price, take his points prop to the over. I love everything about Luka for game number 2, and I think it'll be exciting to watch it play out. Having said that, I don't know if they can win that game technically outright, but I do think it's a decent bet here to go contrarian and take those 7 points.
I am taking the Mavericks plus 7. I bet it early this morning. If I believe that, if I believe they keep it close, then I know Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving have to be much better. 31.5, the points prop for Luka. I'd take the over. 30 points last night, albeit a quiet 30 in a near 20-point loss. Kyrie Irving, though, atrocious. Just 12 points, 6 of 9 from the floor, 0 of 5 from deep. 22.5 is his points prop, dropping by a full point. He's got to go over if Dallas stays in game number 2. Best bet for the series, over 5.5 games at minus 132 with that updated number. Now time for a best bet on this Friday to send you in to the weekend. Before we say farewell and goodbye, it is time for bye.
Bye.
Whoa. Who was that? Was that on the air?
Did that?
Was that over the air? That was Lisi? Goodness, man. Whew.
Hold on a second.
When did that come?
Hold on a second. Everybody heard that. If you're watching the SportsGrid Network at this moment or listening on Sirius XM, you heard that too? Play it again.
Bye.
Now, did they record that yesterday from Lisi, or is this something that we pulled from the archive? Oh, my goodness, man. Wow. How about that,
What's
man?
the best bet?
Isn't that the way to end the show?
Go ahead. What's the best bet?
Spencer Steer to get an RBI for the Reds tonight. We might have to go to, that should be the opening and the closing as Joe Lisi singing to us in and out of breaks.
I mean, what do we even do? What can we do now?
Big boy band
over 11.5 tonight in Chapel Hill between WVU and UNC. Over 13.5 tonight in Virginia between the Cavaliers and the Wildcats. We get some runs. I don't know. What happened to the show I used to love? We'll see you Monday. Have a good weekend.
The Warriors learn some of that split action that they run offensively and bring it to your own team. Folks, the name is Kenny Atkinson. Every time there is a job with a young core that needs to take the next step, I always think of Kenny Atkinson.
Only on SportsGrid.
The numbers might look crazy, especially depending on where you think Jared Goff falls in the National Football League. I would consider him, maybe as crazy as this sounds, a top 10 quarterback.
And again, the theory behind paying your quarterbacks and your top-rated players, pay them earlier. The longer you wait, it only costs you money. If you have a top-flight wide receiver, pay him here.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. To your quarterback in the first round. Yeah. It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Michael Penix is a walking injury. What are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.